This is the Perfect Being. I'm here to tell you all to subscribe to the perfect channel, UnrealEntGaming. Please remember to turn on your notifications to be the first to know about the latest in Dragon Ball news and information. And if you don't, very soon you will all be dead, along with your entire planet.
The Tournament of Power continues as time begins to dwindle down, with our heroes seemingly going up against an unknown warrior who is targeting them from an unseen area of the tournament ring, as both Gohan and Piccolo, alongside Goku, Vegeta, and several other characters including Tien, have their backs up against the wall in trying to face off against the fighter who surprisingly enough cannot be detected, or can he, as we move on forward in the Tournament of Power as time begins to dwindle down as we build up into Dragon Ball Super episode 107. What is going on, Dragon Ball fans? Welcome to my Dragon Ball Super episode 106 breakdown review entitled Find Him, Deathmatch Within an Invisible Attacker, leading into the next exciting episode of Dragon Ball Super episode 107, as we do understand, based on the overall expectation for this episode, as the animation wasn't up to par, the storytelling aspect I believe certainly was. Now, as I stated earlier, there is no episode going into next week. However, we do get to see Dragon Ball Super episode 107, which is prominently going to feature Frost in getting his revenge, as we get to see Master Roshi performing the Mafuba technique. We also get to see Maji Kaio having to square up against Dispo, and of course we finally get to see Jiren, as it is highly promoted that Goku and Jiren are going to have this definitive battle beginning on October. So once October comes around, guys, prepare yourselves, because we're going to be getting, if anything, the biggest and the best battles for the Tournament of Power once we have the commence of Goku and Jiren begin in October. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that, because that is going to be absolutely legendary. But judging based on accordance, we get to see how Dragon Ball Super episode 107 is finally going to focus primarily around Frost, because by the end of the overall promo, we get to see how Frost is shooting out death beams and shooting the finger and pretty much having to be focused, and Goku's facial expressions having to be worried. So there is going to be a huge involvement going into episode 107 that features Frost, and of course possibly even Dispo, Jiren, and probably Toppo in getting involved, since they are the last three on the remaining universe. Now, going into Dragon Ball Super episode 107, the primary focus here was trying to figure out where the snipers were on the overall map. Now, the sniper was actually very cunning in using objects and using heat signatures to primarily hunt down and locate his targets in trying to destroy them. Now, we also get to see in this episode, which I truly did like, was how, we saw Piccolo's arms get blown off several times in this episode. Of course, Piccolo having to regenerate, but the point being was there was a certain point in time where Piccolo and Gohan were not able to follow the track as to what was going on. They weren't able to follow the motions of this sniper because he was very well hidden in using objects and having someone else assist him, because by the end of it, it turns out that there were multiple people behind this in trying to pretty much pursue the same targets. And early on, Dr. Rota was another fodder character. That was one thing I did not like about this episode, was seeing how they treated him. But then again, I mean, what really more did you expect from that kind of a character? But of course, again, all the characters including Prawn, Harmona, and Dr. Rota were eliminated courtesy of Tien and Vegeta. Now, speaking of Tien, we finally have the second elimination for Team Universe number 7, that happening to be Tien. Now, Tien, what he did in this episode was he used clones in order to locate and pretty much draw out the sniper from his hiding spot, and using himself as a sacrament to get the sniper out of the ring, which Tien had to do what he had to do to toss out somebody that he felt was a danger in this tournament. So even though I felt from the beginning that Tien was useless to begin with, at least he was able to get at least one elimination before having to sacrifice himself and getting ringed out by having to throw out the sniper. So that was okay to see. Vegeta and Goku having to throw boulders around because they had to suppress their ki and not trying to get spotted out by the sniper was pretty cool to see as well. Now, I think the overall execution for Gohan was done very poorly because we all assumed that Gohan was going to have a major involvement here, but it turns out that Gohan and Piccolo didn't really do much at all. I mean, they were pretty much strategizing and trying to figure out where this person was. It felt more like a Call of Duty story to me, and trying to, you know, duck and dodge and trying to elude from the sniper catching you, which I thought was a really good concept, but some of the overall utilization strategies for the characters were done very poorly. For example, Gohan, for example, Piccolo having both of his arms blown off several times, but having them as characters not being able to do anything against the snipers, I think was poorly done. Now, I will say, in my opinion, this week's episode was better than last week's episode. Don't hang me by my nuts because I have an opinion. That's just how I feel on the overall portrayal of how we saw Tien execute his clones and having Vegeta and Goku duck for cover and throwing boulders and trying to get the sniper's attention. The overall premise of attacking someone that you had no idea where he was, because if you did, you know, locate where he was at the time, he would simply go on ahead and attack you before you can even register as to what happened. So as seen with Piccolo having his arms blown off. So I mean, the episode did have its flaws in the idea that characters like Dr. Rota were eliminated with complete ease, having Gohan and Piccolo not do anything at all, and simply having to strategize as to how to get the sniper's attention, drawing him out, having to stabilize your ki and having to mask your ki, that way nobody can detect you. But I will say the one enjoyable factor was seeing these little spherical objects locate heat signatures and having to have one person also scout out, that being Prawn, and having to, you know, just venture out and having to pick out targets and stuff. It was enjoyable for what it was worth, and I will say, in my opinion, I do think that based on next week's preview, that episode's going to be better, significantly better than this week's episode that involves also having to see Master Roshi using Mafuba again against presumably Frost, and having Frost, you know, assumingly having to stop Roshi and eliminating him, and we are going to touch up more of that in the overall predictions video. But I also definitively feel that this episode was kind of lacking in a way, because although Vegeta once again got, you know, 2 eliminations by the end of it via a Galagun, even though that was cool to see, there was something about this episode, although to me it was enjoyable, that was missing, slightly missing, and I do think that factor had to include Gohan and Piccolo's utilization and them not having to do anything at all. So I think that this episode did poorly in having them work as a cohesive unit, because the only thing they did was talk to each other and pretty much duck and hide, while Tien Shinhan was the one forced out and using clones to draw the sniper out. Now, I will give credit to Tien for doing what he had to do in order to preserve his team, in order to save his team from complete and utter annihilation. And not to say that our characters weren't able to get the job done, but Tien was the only one who ran out there in trying to use his abilities to his advantage, and ultimately having to wring out her mana via having to use his clones in descending down into the void. So Tien is out, Krillin's out, so I'm assuming the next person is going to be Roshi, perhaps maybe courtesy of Frost, and we do also get to see snippets of Vegeta next week. I don't think Vegeta is going to be prominently involved any deeper in this overall story. I do think that it's going to primarily focus on Frost, and I also think that even judging based by the end of this episode, since there's 32 minutes left, we are going to have some involvement by Frieza as well, as we didn't get to see much from anybody in this episode aside from Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, Gohan, Tien, and the other 3 characters having to be Dr. Rota, Harmana, and Prawn. But the other 3 characters were so poorly executed, I think that's what pretty much draws this episode down a little bit, in having to see the way they functioned. Although nobody was really forced in having to use Super Saiyan or Super Saiyan Blue, what's ironic enough is seeing how Vegeta criticized Gohan's power in having to have trouble in facing these snipers. So I thought that was very interesting to see, because Vegeta was very condescending in the way he was talking to Gohan. And as for Piccolo, I will say that it was pretty cool to see Piccolo, you know, just gushing green blood because his arms got blown off. So at least that was pretty cool to see, and Piccolo had no worries. But I love the worry on Gohan's face as this episode pretty much carried on, because Gohan himself didn't really know what to do in a way, because, you know, he was trying to cater to Piccolo, Piccolo was trying to cater to him, and they didn't want to lose sight of each other because they had more important things to worry about. So post your comments down below, guys. What are your overall thoughts on this episode? For me, again, there's not much to really talk about other than the idea that it was kind of flawed in seeing these other characters get ringed out so early, because there's no execution in storytelling, meaning having to compare the characters. We don't really see much from the character side because they aren't utilizing these characters the way they should, i.e. Dr. Rota, R.E. Harmona, all these characters that are from the other universes, Universe 2, Universe 4, whatever universe they're from. They're not giving these characters a chance to showcase what they can do. Maybe I'm gonna be proven wrong during next week's episode, because I do feel as if next week's episode might tell a very good story in executing character development and trying to tell more of a back and forth struggle involving our characters and other characters as well. But I think that this episode kind of lacked in the overall character utilization department. The same thing as we saw last week with the Universe number 2 fighters and Universe 4 fighters, especially Universe 4 fighters having Master Roshi single-handedly eliminate 3 of them, whereas opposed to this episode, once again, we see another 3 set of fighters be ringed out. So a total of 6 in 2 weeks, you know, having to be ringed out via 3 other characters, Roshi, Tien, and Vegeta. And Goku, I mean, the one thing I will appreciate here is how Goku and Vegeta were throwing boulders at these, you know, people and trying to, you know, draw them out, while Tien used his clones to his advantage. So that I will say was done very good, because finally at least Tien gets to do something, and also executing his Neo Tri-Beam for once, because that was, you know, at least put to a good testament in seeing the sniper go down to his knees and admitting defeat, and then Tien having to commend him. But again, you know, the one thing that kind of draws away from this is the fact that it doesn't matter if you want to, you know, commend your opponent for being, you know, a worthy adversary or something along those lines. It's all about survival, ringing them out by any means necessary. And, you know, we get to see momentarily how Tien dropped his guard, but ultimately we see how Tien used his own vessel to ring out the other Universal fighters, which I thought was pretty cool to see. But there were certain things like animation that was off. The music, I think the music was really good by Sumitomo, so that was pretty good to see, really appreciative of that. But I also feel going forward, there's more to this than what meets the eye as of right now. But the one thing I'm looking forward to more is episode 107 and seeing Maji Kaio. So Maji Kaio, I think, is gonna go down via Dispo having to ring him out, and I also feel as if finally, in some way, shape, or form, we might actually get to see Jiren do something, because for a lot of us that have been watching and waiting, we've been wondering to ourselves as to why Dispo isn't doing anything, you know, in terms of like having to combat someone and bringing them down, other than Hit, because after the Hit fight, we knew that Dispo was going to recover and come back again, but we didn't know when, and it's a lot sooner than a lot of us expected, although we didn't get to see Toppo involved, possibly having him involved as well, as we do have Revenge of F coming up next. So post your comments down below, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed the episode, go on ahead and slap a like down below. If you guys enjoyed the review, then go on ahead and post your comments down below. Tune back in for the overall predictions video, as we are going to be discussing further as to what we're all going to think about what's going to happen in episode 107, because episode 107, once again, it looks to be a very rewarding episode, so hopefully enough you guys get to tune back in for that. This episode, in my opinion, once again, I think was better than last week's episode, but by the end of it, I also feel the episode kind of had flaws in pointing out determinations for character development. There wasn't much shown, I think, from certain people, as I think this should have been Gohan and Piccolo's episode, because for Christ's sake, it's like Vegeta and Goku, we get it, they're gonna have their moments later, but at least to give something to Gohan and Piccolo, unless they are saving those two and having to fight the Universe 6 and the Mechians, and having to fight other characters as well, as we are going to see Gohan more involved as we continue on forward. But thank you all so much for watching, guys. Once again, tune back in for more, and I'll be seeing you all down in the comment section below. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace.